I'm excited about this interview because I'm interviewing my dad. And my dad has had an impeccable military career. He started out with immigrant parents and worked his way up to retire as a lieutenant colonel to finally, at age 72, write two books. And it's something that he has been passionate about his entire life. And so, what I wanted to do in this interview was capture his entire journey of continual reinvention and transformation. And so he highlights that. And so I want you to take a listen and realize that, you know what? Transformation never stops. Even at 72, he's continually transforming. Take a listen. So you've had pretty extensive career, right? So it's transformed many times.
Yes.
What would you say was the most challenging part of all of it? Or not just one?
No, it was always the transition. It's going from what you know to what you don't know, and then having to learn all that stuff, but at the same time forcing yourself or having the discipline and the determination to excel in it. So not to give up, but to become known, you are really good at this. And once I got that, then I was ready for the next step. So it's always that transition that makes it really, it's challenging, exciting, very scary because you don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of uncertainty there. But that's part of life. It's the uncertainty, I think, is what forces me then to make sense out of all that uncertainty. What is it that I need to do right now to get where I want to go? And it's the if life was certain, I wouldn't be, we wouldn't be doing very much. It's the uncertainty in life that forces us to figure what's the problem in my life and what is it that I need to figure out, and what judgment do I need to make? What resources do I need so that I can become a better person, and thrive in my lifetime? And I think it's the transition part. It's where it's always been the most challenging for me.
Right. I mean, you've gone from a person who has transformed or reinvented themselves in their career to now you're in your retirement age, continuing to do something that means a lot to you. What do you say to people that feel stuck and are not sure what they need to do next? Like how did you pull that out of yourself, right? You're always going. You work
Yes.
out every day. You've got a great circle of friends. You're always researching. You're always writing. You're very, very active in this new.
A lot of it has to do with the examples that my parents gave me. And that is, dad didn't retire until he was 78. And it was only because he just couldn't do it anymore. His body couldn't do it. Mom retired at 72 and she wanted to continue, but she couldn't do it because she had to have operations and her body couldn't take it either. So I learned from them is hard work all the way through life until you just can't do it anymore because that's what keeps you going. That's what keeps you finely tuned and more interested in life. I have friends, in different parts of the United States, but particularly in Springfield, who have retired around the same time that I have. But they're not pursuing other activities. They're staying home. They're not exercising. They're not studying, and they don't have very much hope. And that to me is what causes the breakdown in the mind, breakdown in the neurons in your brain, and the breakdown in your body, so that you start moving towards death rather than continuing living and trying to do better things, trying to become better. Life is always about sustaining healthy human growth for human beings. Once you stop that, you will start declining. And that's why I keep on pushing myself, trying to figure out what's that other thing that's going to make me better while helping other people, because it's not just about me. You become better through helping others. My way is through education. My way is through creating nonprofit career academy. My way is through writing books. That's how I figured it out. But people need to figure out what is it that I really enjoy in life that I didn't have the time to pursue while I was working, and now I do. Yes, traveling is great, but if you travel, then do research in the country that you're traveling and then write something about it. Write about your experience, write about their economy, write about what is that culture that you just visited that's good and that can be improved. Trying to understand that. Those are the kinds of examples I could give you.
You mentioned earlier friends. A lot of your friends, at your age, they're home, they're sick. And in the book that I wrote, The Art of Transformation, I talk about the importance of having a good circle of friends, people who reinforce your transformation, people who don't look at you as a person who's changing, but a person who's growing. How do you maintain that circle of friends, that reinforcement? Like, who do you turn to here at this point in your life?
So the hardest part when you get older, it is there is a tendency to remain home and you get really comfortable at home. And the uncertainty of the future then motivates me to get out of the house. I make it a point every day. I start my day by going to a coffee house and sitting around people. I take my books and my journals, my notes, my computer, and I research there for 2 hours while meeting people and talking to them because they'll see your books with your name on it. They'll see what you're writing and they'll just quite come up to you and talk to you about it. I also force myself to go to social events, even though I want to stay home. I go out there and rather than sit by myself on a table, I will go where there's people and just sit there and just start a conversation, listen in a little bit and or introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Ramon. I just moved here and you just start talking and you create that circle of friends. But here I find that the friends I have run the gamut in terms of age groups. It's not just people my age. I have people your age, and who will text me and call me, who want to read some of the books that I've been reading, who want to engage and discuss some of those subjects. And I have younger people who enjoy being around me and meet with me at restaurants or in social places. There's a recent thing I did was I went to a new restaurant, hadn't been before, and I sat down and recognized that the person sitting next to me was a former TV broadcaster for Springfield. He had done this for over 30 years and everybody knows him. I introduced myself and I go every Friday now so I can see him and talk to him. He in turn has introduced me to other people. And that's how you create that social network that engages your mind rather than doing the soliloquy at home, just talking to yourself. So I make it a point to engage with other people.
It's tough for a lot of people. And, I think people unfortunately have these limiting or limited beliefs about themselves. And so they don't get out there and they don't network because they're afraid of what, people might think or say about them. But you're at a point where you're very comfortable in your own skin and you're very comfortable. Like I've heard you can talk about all these amazing things that you've done in your life. This constant continual reinvention of yourself. And what would you say to someone who is at the point in their lives where you are and looking back, and I guess, I think we all may know the answer to this, but what would you say, right? We've all accomplished a lot of things. We've all done something that's of some value, but a lot of people don't see that. What would you say to a person who's just not seeing the amazing things that they've done in their lives at that point in their lives, right? At age 72.
It's going to be scary for them because what I'm asking them to do is not just to think about it. I'm asking them to sit down and write about it. and that is write a narrative about who you are. How did you start? What are the things that you did? What are the things that you enjoyed the most? What about the jobs that you have? How did you excel in that? And if you didn't excel in certain areas, what can you do now to begin excelling in those areas? What are the social aspects? What are the parts that I really do well socially and that I shun because I have certain fears? And then force yourself to confront those fears. Yeah, it's scary, but you will overcome it just like you overcome everything else. You don't overcome things by staying home. Staying home is to relax for a certain amount of time, gain your energy, and then go out and engage other people. Help them. By helping them, you help yourself as well. Research. Never stop researching because as we get older, some of those neurons are not firing as much. But if you engage, they'll continue firing. You'll create new neural pathways. You'll continue learning. It's that staying home and not engaging that really debilitates you. It debilitates you mentally. It debilitates you psychologically. It debilitates you spiritually as well. It's not good for growth. Growth is the entire life, all through the spectrums of your entire life. Never stop. You'll stop when you pass away. In the meantime, it's about how do I sustain healthy human growth? So it's not just about growth itself, but healthy human growth. What are the things I need to do to continue improving and pass those on to other people as well? That's the challenge.
What do you say to the 45-year-old you?
45-year-old me. At 45, I still believe that I have a lot more to do. So the way I see it is, okay, here's the trajectory that I had up to 45. You may be still working in a company. There are these things that you have wanted to do, and then say, okay, in the remaining part of my years, what are the things I have not accomplished that I want to set out to do? And now is the time to begin laying the steps for that. How do I do that? Because we don't know when we're going to pass away. If we eat well, we drink healthy stuff, eat healthy food, exercise, we increases our chances of remaining longer. But if that is true, that we're going to increase our chances of remaining longer, you need to be engaged in terms of how am I going to grow as a healthy human being. So at 45, that's the middle, maybe the middle point of life. Figure out what are the other things I want to do, and then lay it out. A year from now, this is what I want to do. I still have on my refrigerator affirmations. These are the things I'm going to do next year. These are the things I have 5 years from now. I don't stop that. My daughter and I went to a course by Lou Tice in Seattle, and it was about transforming life as well, transforming your life. And it was psychology driven. And he talked about self affirmations and writing those down and reading them every day. I still have, in fact, I think here, yes, I still have here a bunch of sheets of affirmations that I go through every day. I've accomplished a lot of those, but I continue so that they remain imprinted in my neurons. And I continue not giving up, but continue going after those affirmations. Do I
Yeah.
accomplish all of them? No, it's still a challenge. But by reading this, it forces me to say, okay, I didn't do this today, but I need to do this tomorrow.
And I highlight that in the book repeatedly, the importance of not only journaling and having those conversations with yourself about the work you're doing in your transformation, but also the importance of affirmations, right? And goal setting and ensuring that you are staying true and on course to that transformation, that you're not
Right.
letting the noise get in the way, but you're staying focused. And I think that's huge. And I do the same thing. And I learned that from you is I keep my affirmations in a plastic folder so I
Like,
can read them every morning and they evolve. That's the other thing. Your affirmations will evolve. They won't stay the same. You will accomplish those things, right? Similar to vision boards, right? You'll set up your vision board and you will go after it and you will accomplish and get everything you wanted that's on that vision board. But then you've now reinvented, you've created a new you, and now the
Yes,
new you is going to go and move in a different direction and reinvent that new you. And so you set a new set, you put together a new set of affirmations and a vision board, right? And it continues, and that's really what the art of transformation is. It's just a continual reinvention of yourself.
correct. Yeah, and it's all through life. And you're right. It's as you progress, you need to you have to have continuity. You have to continue reading all the affirmations that you have done. And then as you continue growing, adding on to them. You don't delete them, but you add on to them and you continue reading all of them every day so that they remain a part of you or become a part of you, of who you are.
Tell us about Ramon Martinez.
Okay. So I come from a background of father from Dominican Republic. His father was actually from Fajardo of Puerto Rico, and his grandfather then was from Spain. My mother was from Puerto Rico. My father moved to to Puerto Rico, and thereafter was inducted into the army. It's called they're called the Buccaneers. The 65th Infantry Regiment it was the only all Spanish speaking regiment in the entire United States Army. They fought in World War II and in the Korean War. He underwent surgery because he was shot in the shoulder and in the arm. And so he received the Purple Heart and was pulled out of Korea and recovered in Japan and also in the United States. He called for my mother to move from Puerto Rico to San Antonio, Texas, where he was recovering and then began working. So I was born in San Antonio, Texas. So in 1962, around their parts, we moved to Los Angeles because San Antonio, Texas was really a hard place for employment at that time. And Los Angeles was probably at that time the best decision economically. Father was worked in a clothes factory for children. He was the one who cut the fabrics into the different shapes. And so he was getting basic pay. And my mother then began working in a bathing suit factory. And she started off at the base level and then became the forelady. And she was the forelady for over 20 to 30 years. And I'm really proud of that she was able to run a whole unit. She retired at the age of 72. My father retired at the age of 78. We lived in central Los Angeles. We lived 3 blocks away from the Los Angeles Coliseum. In those days, that was a dangerous area. It was a low income area. And even though the Watts riot happened in Watts, it went all the way to our area. And I still remember the fires and the National Guard on the corners and the violence that was going on in that area. But that gave me the opportunity to continue going to, at that time, it was a parochial school, St. Vincent School in central Los Angeles. They gave me a lot opportunities to learn about things that would help me into the future, particularly the discipline that they provided and they taught us. Then from there, I went to high school, at Cathedral High School, which is right at the base of the Los Angeles Dodgers Stadium. It's still there from when I looked up on the map. And so it goes back to, I believe, 1907, somewhere in that range. I was fortunate to go there. It was an all-boys school at that time. And the reason why I was fortunate is because of all the different subjects that they offered. And in particular, the one that really interested me was they offered a philosophy course. and had so much insights that I knew in my heart that that's something I wanted to pursue was philosophy. I didn't know how to do this, but I knew that this is an area that I really wanted to investigate and become proficient in. So once graduated from high school, I received the Los Angeles Times newspaper award, scholarship. And so I began at Los Angeles Community College. But while I was going to the Los Angeles Community College, I was primarily majoring in philosophy. And I saw that that would be my way to continue progressing. The Vietnam War was at its height in those days, and they had the draft, and my number came out. I was fortunate. My number came out as 365. So
So
there was no way.
explain that number system real quick.
Yeah. So it's based upon the birthday that you have and the number that comes up on the lottery. There's 365 days in the year. So when your number comes up, mine was on July the 23rd, and when my number came up on the lottery, it was the last number, and it was 365. So that meant that I would never be drafted in the army, and I didn't have to join any armed forces. I knew I wanted to go into the Air Force. I did not want to go as an enlisted the way my father did and the way other members in my family did. I wanted to become something more than that to demonstrate that in our family we can progress. So,
You knew in your mind that you didn't want to go in as an enlisted,
correct.
you wanted to become an officer in the
Correct.
Air Force.
In the United States
Take
Air
that
Force.
Air Force, kind of take that next level above.
Yes. And I knew what career path I wanted to start in the Air Force because when I was around 13 to 16, somewhere in there, I was playing baseball with my cousin. And when we were playing, I looked up in the sky and I saw this plume of smoke. I thought it was nuclear war. So I ran to the house to turn the TV on to find out what was going on. It was an actual launch of a Minuteman intercontinental ballistic missile. And they showed the trajectory and what it did. And at that age is when I said to myself, this is what I want to do as an officer in the United States Air Force. So my entire trajectory at that time was what are the things I need to do so that I can get into the Air Force. And the Air Force at that time, all they required to be an officer is that you have a bachelor's degree. They didn't care at that time what was your major. And for me, philosophy was really easy compared to a lot of the other studies.
So this
And
is interesting, right? So here you are at a very young age, and you're very interested in philosophy, which, is very insightful, very existential. The conversations that you and I have had, right? It's very deep thinking. But then on the flip side, you're interested in intercontinental ballistic missiles.
right. So so I saw it as philosophy as part of my life, but so was being in the Air Force as an officer. That was some that was a field that I wanted to go into to build a career and continue in the progress. But while at California State University at Long Beach, I had a mentor, and he was from El Salvador. He was a professor of philosophy, spoke French. He studied under Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre of France.
French.
Yes. And so he was an existentialist. And he took me under his wings and just taught me enormous stuff that I was able to use in the Air Force as well. So when I graduated from California State University at Long Beach, I was going simultaneously to the University of Southern California to get uh, under the detachment, the Air Force Cadet Detachment there at the University of Southern California,
Okay.
and I received my commission as a second lieutenant in the reserves on June the 19th of 1975. And
So just to note, today that we are recording this is
Wow, now that
January
you say
1st.
that, yes, yes, amazing the way life works. So I received my commission, but at that time, the month before, the Vietnam War had ended. So even though people were getting they were getting their commission, that didn't mean that they were going to be automatically taken into the Air Force. So a lot of people obviously wanted to become pilots. So a lot of second lieutenants who wanted to go into the Air Force to become a pilot were told that they were doing a reduction in forces and that their services as pilots would not be required, that they can go into another field if they wanted to. But that didn't happen to me because I had already selected to go into the missile career field. So I didn't have to worry about that. And so 6 months later is when I was taken into the Air Force and sent to Vandenberg Air Force Base for missile combat crew training. And you were 6 years old at that time. You asked me if I would be your father, and I took that to heart because I knew that you and I had something special. Soon thereafter, when I was stationed then in F.E. Warren Air Force Base in 1976, it was around, must have been around the end of July after my birthday, that we moved to Cheyenne, Wyoming. And so it was a wonderful experience for all of us. And soon thereafter, that once I started in missiles in combat crew going out to the launch control sites, then I was able to adopt you as my son. And so you have both my middle name, my first name as your middle name, and you have my last name. And I'm very proud of that. And we've always maintained a closeness with that. So in missiles, it was the right decision at the right time because a lot of pilots or people who wanted to become pilots were not being taken in. There, I was very fortunate. Again, it's about at the very beginning, it's about how well you do your job, but also how you influence others. And so a lot of things happen in terms of opportunities that I met with full colonels, even I believe it was a two-star general on the base. And I was able to bypass, or not bypass, I was able to accelerate in my career. And so they promoted me to first lieutenant. From there, I became the commander of a combat crew and excelled in that area. And from there, then they made me into an instructor. And 6 months after being an instructor and had just turned into a captain, I was selected then to become the program manager for the MX Peacekeeper, which was a missile system had the capability of carrying 10 nuclear bombs on it. And I was also the test director for the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile, which carried 3 nuclear bombs.
Yet
And
you still had this passion for philosophy.
yes, but at the same time, once I knew that I was really good in what I was doing in missiles, uh, then I started concentrating while in missiles, taking courses to get my master's degree in public administration. And so in 1979, I got my master's degree in public administration. So I was at that time then a brand new captain and also having a master's degree. So I was ahead of a lot of individuals in my group who did not have that. So when they picked me to go to Vandenberg Air Force Base, uh, I would take care of those programs all the way through launching it. So also, what I forgot to mention was in 1977, I and my commander, we were selected to go to Vandenberg Air Force Base to launch a Minuteman intercontinental ballistic missile. So that was another thing to help me to progress. And it was as a second lieutenant. So those things put me on a trajectory where I was being identified as this is an individual who is capable of excelling, give him the opportunities. But at that time, out of all the Air Force at that time, there were only 0.5% of officers were Latinos. And so it was a challenge in order to demonstrate that you're as good or even better than most of the individuals in the entire Air Force. But those challenges is what drove me. It's always the challenge to how do I sustain healthy human growth? And I would figure out in those days, okay, is by becoming the best I can be in whatever job or program you give me, by getting a higher education, and continue down that path. But I also remembered that one day I was down in the Launch Control Center and I was reading a book on Latin America and the history of Latin America because of my background. And it was written by a person who had a PhD in politics. And at that time, I figured, so I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I said, I want to become a philosopher for the Air Force. I didn't know how to do this. At the same time, I knew that somewhere in my career, I wanted to become a political military affairs officer. Again, I didn't know how to do that because I was in missiles. So while I was I was at Vandenberg Air Force Base, I get a telephone call from the Air Force asking me to volunteer to go to a university, get my master's degree in philosophy, and then go to the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs to teach philosophy. Funny thing was, I didn't get it in my mind. It didn't click. I answered, no, I don't want to do this because I know that once you pick a career in the Air Force Academy, you'll be stuck at a certain place. They're going to start identifying me as a full-time student who doesn't want to do anything else other than teach, and so they would see me as a full-time academic, and I would not progress, and that I thought I was going to go places by being in missiles because I was really doing well there. The answer I got back was, well, you didn't volunteer, so we're volunteering you. So we're taking you out of missiles. You get to go to whatever university you want that you can pass. And then from there, when you get your degree, you will go to the Air Force Academy. So I was given 18 months to get the master's degree. I picked the University of California at Santa Barbara. Rather than in the 18 months, I did it in 11 months. And then we were sent to Colorado Springs. And I started off as an instructor of philosophy, teaching ethics. And even during that time frame, I introduced then philosophy of law, which they never had. And it still is there today. So that was something that I was able to add to. I also taught American philosophy. And then I became an assistant professor of philosophy, while at the same time, the full colonel in charge of the department made me his executive officer. So not only did I teach and introduce these new courses, I also ran his office for him. And so that again identified me as a person who wants to do more and can do more. So at that time I was promoted to a major, and through the colonel's influence, I was selected to go to Air Command and Staff College, which was in Montgomery, Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, and spent a year there learning all about intel, all the different areas of the Air Force. We had foreign officer students. In my class, I had a lieutenant colonel from Saudi Arabia. I had a lieutenant colonel from Turkey. I had a lieutenant colonel from Uganda. I had a lieutenant colonel from Uruguay. And so it was great experiences. And from there, I wrote a book because one of the requirements was that you would write something as the graduation requirement. And I wrote a book on war and morality in the military profession for the Air Force Academy, actually. And from there, I was selected then to go to Washington, D.C. to get into the political military affairs, which
Which is what
again,
you always thought about.
yeah, and I didn't know how to do it, but I was selected to do this. And it was a great experience because it was right in downtown Washington. I'll never forget, on 16th Street, right across a huge park. You could see the White House all the way from our street. The Polish embassy was right next to us. The Mexican embassy was there, and then later on they moved. It was called Embassy Road, and it was Meridian Hill Park, is what I remember it was. Wonderful experience because at that time it was 18, and now I think it's 20 representatives of the different countries of Latin America. And what I didn't know is what this organization had been there as a result of the Organization of American States, which is like United Nations, but it represents the entire Western Hemisphere. And they had been around since 1898. And we were the military arm of the Organization of American States. So now you're working not only with generals from these different countries in Latin America and the United States, you're working with the ambassadors. And that's an incredible experience to be under. And one of the individuals that represented the United States was General Barry McCaffrey, who later on became my direct boss in my last job in the United States Air Force. So again, it's how things end up happening in life. So I did that for 4 years. I was Deputy Secretary for Liaison, Protocol, and Public Relations. And then I be promoted to Lieutenant Colonel, and I was sent then from there to, it was as a National Defense Fellow in the University of Miami. And my job there was to take courses on any field in terms of political science, and then write on behalf of the United States. I had to write on something on that interested either the United States Armed Forces and or other countries. So at the University of Miami, I did the 1-year tour there, and I wrote, it was about 72-page paper on the future of European security called An Archetype for European Security. And it's on academia.edu, and it's still there. And quite frankly, most of the people who read it are from Europe, who read that, still read that article even to today. And while at Miami, I represented the University of Miami. I was selected to do this at the Chamber of Commerce for the Greater Miami-Dade County. And the president at that time of the Chamber of Commerce asked me to invite the general of U.S. Southern Command to come to Miami to see if we can inform him and gently persuade him to move the entire headquarters from the Republic of Panama to Miami. While there, on the first day that I handled the entire trip for the 4-star general, I even picked him up at the airport and drove him. He asked me if I would work for him. And I gently turned that down. He said he understood. But the very next week that I had to go back to Washington, D.C. to meet with my other National Defense Fellow mates, because we were going to do a war scenario, actually about North Korea at that time. And during the break, I have a folder on my table, and it was assigning me to be Chief of Latin American Strategy for U.S. Southern Command. But it was not in Panama. It was to do it in Washington, D.C. So I did that in 2 different offices. We had an office in the Pentagon, and we had an office in Crystal City. I was majorly in Crystal City. And so I did that for 4 years. And at one point, General McCaffrey became the commanding general of U.S. Southern Command. And we had a good relationship. At one point, he said I was his best communicator and his entire staff. I would write weekly reports from Washington, D.C., representing our four-star generals' positions, and it would be at the State Department, White House, and in Congress. And it was an amazing experience. Soon thereafter, when I went to as a National Defense Fellow, that is the equivalent, even though there were only 12 individuals who were chosen any one year as a National Defense Fellow, it is the equivalent today of War College. So you get that as credit. So even though you don't go back to Maxwell Air Force Base, being a National Defense Fellow is the equivalent to having your background at Air War College. So that was a big thing for us to
Right.
be selected for one of those 12. I had decided that that being in the Air Force, the 20 years was good enough, and I wanted to start a career track in the civilian world. So the very next day, I was selected, and I became vice president of Genetics and IVF Institute for creating a market for them in Latin America. So all the things I learned in the Air Force were applicable in terms of this new job that I received. And so my job was to help create a market in terms of criminal offender databasing and paternity testing. And so I was able to influence that process by writing a draft bill for the Republic of Panama. And they took it in turn and did it according to their culture and their practices. And they became the 8th country in the world to have criminal offender databasing using DNA. So that experience that I had in the military prepared me for that. Went down to Miami again, took my mother along with me, went down to Miami and spent time there. And I became a director of strategy for Miami-Dade County and did that for a year, and then moved back to DC to help out and wrote articles in terms of in terms of how do we do resilience in our society in terms of homeland security, and did that. And then after that, I was selected to become the CEO and president of a nonprofit organization in Rhode Island. Did that for about 4 years. I think it was
Let,
4 years.
let's go back for a quick second. Before you did this, you did some intelligence work, didn't
Yes.
you?
Yes. What I did was uh, the Department of Defense asked me they provided the document. And what they wanted me to do is this document was about, they had just discovered this document. It was how Al Qaeda did their attacks, how Al Qaeda did their preparations. And so I did around, I know it was over 12 presentations detailing all the things about Al Qaeda for them. So that helped me in terms of preparing for Homeland Security as well. And so I was involved in helping to trying to create with a nonprofit organization, Homeland Security College. And then from there, I was called up and I was asked to then be president of a nonprofit organization in Rhode Island, helping the immigrant community. And I did that from 2006 through 2010. And then started my own practice in terms of as a consultant, and did consulting work for helping companies to do a strategy, a business strategy, and as well as how to create and continue building the resilience of companies. And then the last job I had was, while I was consulting, I was asked if I would do for a year to be president of a healthcare management company in Tampa, Florida. So I did that, turned 62, and thought it was time to retire. But it wasn't really retiring. It was, the way I saw it was, this is my opportunity to create a new career, and that was to write books on areas that I think would help companies, help individuals in those companies And now I've been focusing, got a book published, which was Business Strategy and Resilience, Sustaining the Healthy Growth of Your Company is Your Business. And from there, I moved to Springfield, Missouri, and was asked by a nonprofit organization if I would take them through strategy lessons. So while there, I was doing that for a particular purpose. I was doing that so that I can prepare them so they would get to the point where then I knew that we could do two projects together. And that was one, that I would create for them the Nonprofit Career Academy, and two, and that was to build what we call pocket neighborhoods for low income and middle income to live together in our neighborhood, because I live in the poorest part of town, and it's how do we build this community. So as a result of all of that, I decided to write a book on nonprofit organizations. And what I wanted to do was not to reiterate what everybody else says about nonprofits. I wanted to do 5 subjects that you should know well in a nonprofit, but you don't, either because they didn't teach it or they didn't teach it well. The title is From Life to Sustaining Healthy Human Growth. What is morality? And so I've traced the evolution of human beings, what I call the human-minded animal. And from there is, as a result of evolution, why do we have morality or the study of ethics?
And that is the interview with my dad. Thank you for listening and have a great day.